Hey everybody, welcome back to Gideon Stuff. Today I have another interesting knife review, and this one is actually really interesting. This is the Sarge Knives SK-823, I believe. SK-823? Yep, SK-823. I have already reviewed a Sarge knife. It was the 824. This is the 823, which I already said, but yeah, we're starting to get circular in our speech. So let's go ahead and take a blade length measurement. We're coming in here at 3 1/4 inches on the dot, just like the other Sarge knife we looked at. So that seems to be a size that they enjoy using, which I don't have a problem with. That's a fine size. This puts this knife in the medium range for me. And to demonstrate that, let's bring out our rats. And there we go. Medium-sized knife. The Rat 1 is where I consider large knife to start. Let's bring out our Civivis. Again, the Praxis is kind of in that realm of this is where large knives begin. Here's the Elementum, a knife that I consider to be kind of a transition between small and medium. There we go. I don't know why I'm explaining all my philosophy on knife size right now. These comparisons are mostly for you guys to look at. Hopefully I bring out a knife that you're familiar with and you can compare it to this knife and decide whether or not it's a size that you enjoy. There we go. It's almost exactly bug out size. Almost exactly. Just a little bit longer in handle. But pretty similar to bug out. Okay. And then just to wrap up comparisons here, let's bring out our aforementioned Sarge knife that we already reviewed. And, heck, let's bring out this little SRM. There we go. Cool. So what are we looking at here in terms of materials? We're looking at a blade of 440C, which you can see right there. This blade is dirty. I have been using this knife. I said this in the review of the other Sarge knife. Maybe this is... I'm actually filming this the same day I'm filming this review. But a lot of people said that they don't think this is real 440C. I don't have any reason to doubt that it's not. It's performed like 440C. It's been a decent steel, so maybe I'll reach out to Lee at Love Them Knives and see if we can work something out to get some Sarge knives tested. But until then, I'm going to call it 440C. We have aluminum scales here, steel liners, steel clip, which is reversible, pretty cool. And the most interesting feature of this knife is this lock here. They call this their dynamic lock, and I forgot to mention the review of this knife here, but they call this the turbo lock. It's a button lock. So, the dynamic lock. Now, obviously, at first, I thought it was just going to be a crossbar lock, right? It's not. This lock is actually very different. So, it looks like an axis lock. And, again, when I first saw this in the display case at the grocery store I got it from, I thought it was an axis lock. If I looked harder, though, I would have realized something strange. So on an axis lock or crossbar lock knife, you see that the slot that the bar rides along is horizontal. This slot is vertical. It doesn't go this way, it goes that way. And indeed, the button moves up. And yes, it's on both sides, making this knife a full ambi knife. But what this lock does, so let's look at the back here. Now, I have not taken this knife apart. I'm honestly kind of scared to. Maybe we will in this review. I don't know. Maybe not. But anyways, what we can see here is dirty in there. Blow that out. So we can see in here, maybe, we have this little thing back here, which I'm actually not sure what that is. Oh wait, yes I am. Never mind. I forgot that I'd actually figured that out. Okay, but let me grab a flashlight and see if you can see how this lock operates. Okay, so can you see down in there a little bit? See, there's actually some complex, not milling really, but there's some complex little areas milled out there in the scales. What you can also see is there's the tang of the blade. So there's no bar going across the tang of the blade. Instead, when you move this up, let's bring this up here. This moves the stop pin. So this little bar here, the stop pin, is what is moved by these studs. So when you open the knife, that falls into place. And this is a solid lockup. Like, this is super solid. Very, very solid lockup. And so when you pull these up, basically what this part is the stop pin is on an arm, is on two arms on either side that move it behind the blade or away from the blade. Very interesting. And something that's cool is, so with an axis lock, you can actually deploy the knife with the lock. You cannot do that here. If you push this down, you cannot push this bar down when the knife is in the closed position. So it's a very different lock from an axis lock. And it's the first time I've ever seen anything like this. Maybe they stole it from someone. I don't know. Maybe it's been used before. Let me know in the comments if you know. But it's a very interesting lock. And we'll talk about that more. I just want to kind of introduce the lock right now. Real quick, though, let's go ahead and show this guy in action doing some cutting. We'll be right back. All right. Sarge knives. SK-823. Pretty cool knife, actually. Pretty cheap one. Let's see. Let's talk about it. How are the ergos? So the ergos are that this is how you hold the knife. They're okay. I mean, the knife is comfortable. My biggest problem with the ergos is that the handles are pretty slippery. The buttons for the lock can sometimes press into your hand a little bit, but it's not that bad. The clip, surprisingly, isn't a huge issue. I can definitely feel it, but it's not something that's making me want to cry or anything. How does it carry? Well, actually, let's talk about the action. The action is amazing, especially on the opening, the thumb studs. Whoops. They fire so good. The flipper tab does work, surprisingly. It is on bearings. It does drop, and it's pretty free swinging. The lock, see, with practice, you can actually get to where you can swing the knife closed. You just have to let go of the lock at the exact right time. So you open it, swing it closed. You can get it. It's not that bad. You can definitely get it. So yeah, great action. How does it carry? So we have a reversible tip-up clip, which is not sunk into the scale, and it has button screws. I don't like seeing that, but going in and out of the pocket, it's not the worst thing ever, actually. The knife itself is a little bit heavy, and sometimes, yeah, like that, you can get hung up on those button screws. The clip itself has good tension. The knife can be a little bit heavy. It's pretty chunky, but, you'll adapt to it if you need to. Okay, let's do some cardboard slicing. This knife, I forget what the behind the edge reading was. Not the thinnest thing ever on this 440A blade, but it is a hollow grind, and it could be worse, honestly. It really could be. Okay, not bad. Not bad. Let's go down here. Remember, with this test, all I'm doing is pushing the blade down and seeing how many of these strands I can cut. And I was getting all of them but one right there. Got through one, partially through another. So yeah, definitely That's an okay score. It's an average score. Get the pool noodle out here. That's where you can really feel the thickness behind the edge on a blade, but it did okay. Nothing spectacular, but pretty good. Let's get back to the table. Alrighty, so let's get a little more in depth with the Sarge Knives SK-823. Let's start with what I'm liking. First thing I'm liking is, well, honestly, the ergos are pretty good. I do wish there was some jimping up here, but the ergos are not bad. The knife is pretty slick with these aluminum scales, but not bad. Not bad. So the ergos are fine. I wouldn't say they're amazing. They're fine. The knife, I mean, there's no real hot spots. It's just a little bit too slick. Next thing, this knife is full ambi. You have ambidextrous thumb studs, the flipper's ambi, the lock is ambi, and the clip can be flipped, which is really nice. Next thing, I do like the clip. It's not recessed into the scale, and it's using button screws, but it is positioning the knife tip up, which is something that we didn't see in the other one. So that's good. And the clip itself works okay. Not the best clip, but it works okay. Next thing, the action on this knife is stupid. So flipper tab has jimping, and this knife doesn't really have a detemp, but so as you can see there, I can fail it, although it does still want to spring out. With the flipper tab, I can fail it because there's no detent. However, if I do give it some juice, yeah, it's not hard at all to get this knife to fully deploy. Also, we'll talk about fidgeting here in a little bit. Thumb studs, however, oh my gosh, the thumb studs work 100% of the time, and they feel snappy. In fact, when I first deployed this knife, I used the thumb studs. I did that, I was like, oh, it's assisted. I was like, oh, that's kind of disappointing. No. It's not assisted. It's just, oh man. The thumb studs are placed perfectly. They just fire that blade out there so readily. It's, oh man, it's incredible. So yeah, the action on this knife is very, very good. Very good action. It's on ball bearings. Very smooth. There's a little bit of that rumbliness that you can feel with some cheaper bearings. When you get to here, you feel a little bit of rumbliness, but it's still very smooth. And as you saw, yeah, it's a dropper. So yeah, that's really, really cool. Next thing, the fin finish on this knife was good. Perfectly centered. The lockup is absolutely solid. Everything works the way it's supposed to. So, uh-oh, my computer's dinging at me. So yeah, I can't complain there. That's really, really nice. Next thing I like is the blade is actually fairly functional. So we have a drop point blade here, and by fairly functional, I actually mean it's functional. We have a hollow grind. Blade stock thickness isn't too skinny or too robust. Here it is against a Rat 1. It's about the same as a Rat 1. We have a nice piercing tip here. And unlike the Sarge SK-824, this knife is ground a little bit better. One thing that we can see here is it has a much better sharpening choil. In fact, the sharpening choil on this knife is actually pretty good. 440C is an okay steel, especially at this price. And like I said, this knife did perform like 440C. It was performing pretty good. Not amazing, but pretty good. The thinness behind the edge kind of varies as it goes, but we have from about 19 thousandths to about 22 thousandths. So definitely not as thick as the other one. Definitely within acceptable EDC range, I would say. And in fact, I would say that this knife is kind of a EDC / harder use type knife. So I like to see that. Next thing, the locking mechanism. We have to talk about the locking mechanism. It's very unique. And like I said, this knife locks up so solid. Like, it locks up more solid than any Benchmade I've handled. Really, really nice. And, I mean, again, maybe I'll take this knife apart. I really don't want to, but maybe we will. I'm kind of scared to. Don't want to mess anything up. You know what? We'll do disassembly here in a little bit. Anyways, this lock is very interesting. It takes a little more getting used to than an Axis lock. And once you see there that it does have some resistance right here as it's going past this movable stop pin. But as long as you keep the lock pulled back long enough as you swing it shut, you can avoid that bounce out like that. So I like this locking mechanism. It's full ambi. It allows for a great action, both with a flipper, and especially with the thumb studs. Very smooth. And the fidget factor is really cool here, because especially if you're using the flipper, you flip it, and then your thumb is right here ready to fling that lock back into place. It's really, really fun to fidget with. And yeah. So before we take this apart, let's get into the negatives. First thing, these marks that are on this aluminum were there out of the box. I have no idea what they are, but they won't rub off. I think they're just an error in the finish when they're doing the aluminum finish. So it's a little bit disappointing, but you know, it is what it is. Next thing, the clip is not perfect. In fact, I don't know. It's not my favorite clip, but it's much better than this clip. So improvements. Although this knife came before this knife. This is the 823 and the other one was the 824. This stands to logical reason that this one would have come first. Anyways, whatever. Next thing, it's kind of a plain looking knife. Like, it's really just kind of boring, in my opinion. But whatever. The flipper tab is huge when the knife is open. So, like, you know, you don't really get a lot of contact there. When the knife is closed, it looks like a very minimal flipper tab, but when it's open, you've got a big flipper there. Good guard, but just a big flipper. I do wish there was jimping up here. The aluminum is pretty slick. But that's honestly it. The price on this knife is $30. That's a good price. For what you're getting here, that is a great price. I have no problems with that at all. And should I get my final conclusions or should I save them till after we take this knife apart? I'm actually still debating if I even want to do this. You know what? Maybe we'll just take that top scale off. I have a feeling this is not going to be a fun experience, but let's see. First of all, let's just test and see if the screws are... If the screws are free spinning, we're not going to disassemble it. Okay, T6 body screws. Ooh, nice long screws, fairly deep heads. Okay, so far it's disassembling like a knife should. Switch over to my T8 for that pivot. Ah, free spinning pivot. Well, free spinning pivot. Add that to the list of don't likes, and I'm not going to try and take this knife apart. It doesn't need it. It's working just fine. And honestly, I don't even know if I would know how to put this locking mechanism back together because it does seem fairly complicated. Get in there, screw. So anyways, while I'm screwing this back together, I guess I'll go ahead and talk about my final conclusions. So my final conclusions are that this is a really cool knife. Why is that screw not going in? Oh, that's why. Because I'm an idiot. Ah, there we go. My final conclusion on this is that this is a really interesting knife and a really cool knife. Is it a knife that I recommend? Actually, yes. With the other Sarge knife, I said that it was something that if you're just one of those people like me who likes to look for weird knives and curiosities and oddities and stuff, you should check it out. This knife I'm actually going to give a recommend. Look, for $30, this is pretty good. I don't have a whole lot of complaints here. It functions well, it locks out solid, and it's a good EDC tool. Nothing fancy, nothing special, but I think it's good. And I mean, I guess that's where I'm going to leave you guys. Thank you for watching, and like, comment, subscribe. Have a great one.